Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is always a true pleasure and honour to rise in the House of Commons and speak on behalf of the incredible people of Peterborough, Kawartha. So, another day, another scandal. And it really feels like everything is on fire. It really is heavy right now for a lot of people in Canada. And when they watch this House, it is so frustrating for people at home. And I assure you, it is also frustrating to sit in here and listen to the repeat, the Groundhog Day, that it is in here every day of the same thing over and over again. And Canadians really want one thing. One thing. They want an election.
Yes.
It's the only way out of this disaster. And that's really what this is. This is a disaster. Madam Speaker, this will be the most consequential election in my lifetime, in many people's lifetimes. Because without a doubt, Madam Speaker, people's lives depend on it. And that is not dramatic. That is not being rage farmer. That is the facts of what is happening on the streets of Canada. And I don't know how the Liberals and NDP go home after a week here and go to a grocery store or go out in their community and not hear this from every member in their community. There's no trust. There's nothing in place anymore, and all hope feels lost. And that's a terrible, terrible feeling. You know, the finance minister calls it a vibe. It's a bad vibe. It's a bad vibe, according to the finance minister, that over 2 million people are accessing a food bank in a month. It's a bad vibe that 1 in 5 kids are experiencing poverty. It's a bad vibe that kids in homeless shelters has tripled in Toronto in the last 8 years. It's a bad vibe when you walk down Byward Market on a Tuesday at 7 o'clock and a man is overdosed, dead on the street, and paramedics roll up to revive him, which they tell me they've already done multiple times that week. It's a bad vibe. That's who's in charge of our country right now. So you can bet people are mad. You can bet people are hurt and hopeless. You have a Prime Minister who is vibing to Taylor Swift, exchanging friendship bracelets while the city of Montreal burns. It's a bad vibe. So this all comes down to a level of corruption that has to be addressed in this House. So the Green Slush Fund is a fund created by the Liberals that the Auditor General has done an audit on, and we are still waiting, pushing, and pressuring the Liberals to hand over these unredacted documents from the Green Slush Fund. So a whistleblower came to committee and said, I can't take this anymore. I can't lay my head on the pillow knowing what's going on in the government and keep showing up to work, because they wanted a moral compass. And so they came and they testified at committee and said, this is corruption at its core. This is a $1 billion fund. So the Auditor General proceeds to do an audit. 90 decisions in which the fund had violated its own conflict of interest policies. 1 out of 6 projects funded by SDTC, which was $59 million, weren't eligible, and in some cases didn't even support the development of a new green technology. Scam, corruption. Over a dozen government departments and agencies either provided redacted documents or simply refused to comply with the order and withhold some or all of their records. You know, Madam Speaker, right now in the House I'm speaking and there's talk everywhere because nobody's even listening anymore because corruption is normal under that Prime Minister. This is nothing to them. They're talking, it doesn't matter because the Conservatives keep speaking and they keep saying the same thing. We will keep saying the same thing because we will fight for Canadians. We are the only ones in this House calling out this corruption. And it is absurd and it is insane. And everyone at home knows this. This is the most consequential time in history of politics. 1 in 5 kids are hungry. 1,400 homeless encampments. The YWCA shelter in Halifax says women can't leave the shelters because there are no housing. And do you know what happens when you can't leave a shelter or you can't get into a shelter? The IPV, intimate partner violence on the street, is going up. Women are dying. There was a woman murdered in broad daylight just weeks ago in Ottawa with her 2 children. He got out of the car, slit her throat, and she bled out. Oh, do I have your attention now, Liberals and NDP? Do I have your attention now? I hope I do. Because this is so consequential. You may be sitting in here in your green comfy chair, but people at home are starving. Starving. These are not made-up stats. This is real life. And if you go outside and you talk to people and maybe visit some of the homeless encampments, you will know what is happening. Food banks are running out of food. The people who used to volunteer at a food bank are now using a food bank. And you know, the 2024 Hunger Report from Food Banks Canada showed these shocking statistics. Over 2 million users in 1 month, 30% of which are children. But Madam Speaker, those numbers are low. Because I started to think about it. I started to think about Fleming College that runs a food bank. They wouldn't be registered with Food Banks Canada. And I started to think about street-level advocacy that goes down every day and gives hot meals to people every single day. Scott Cooper, he's not registered with Food Banks Canada. How many people, you know, ladies who are making sandwiches and driving them to their downtowns and delivering them, they're not accounted for that. Those numbers aren't even real. They're higher than that. They're higher than that. There is not one area in this country that is functioning. Not one. Not one area that is doing okay, that is thriving. And do you know what's so sick? Is to sit on this side of the House and to have that Prime Minister and that Leader of the Opposition who holds that man in power and to say it's not their fault. No, they're a victim. They're a victim. The Minister of Justice had the audacity to stand in this House yesterday when he was called out on his atrocious justice laws in this country. And do you know what he said? We delivered bail reform. Yeah, you delivered bail reform, all right. How about you check the incidence of femicides in this country, of women being murdered in broad daylight, or the woman, the 16-year-old girl in Northern Ontario who had her arm slashed off by her abusive boyfriend, who, guess what, everyone? Guess what? He was out on bail, but he delivered bail reform. When you destroy trust, you destroy society. This Prime Minister has no respect. He has no trust, and it is chaos on the streets. And people need hope. People need to know that there will be laws put in place to prevent this level of corruption that we have never seen in history. It's become normal. It's so common. It's so common, it's normal. You have a minister of employment and labor who did misinform the House. You're not allowed to say that one word, Madam Speaker. I appreciate that. Who misinformed the House of his Indigenous heritage. Who took money from the government, much like this green slush fund. He's gone. He's no longer the minister. And it's just move on. Move on to the next thing. How many ministers are gone from that side of the House? You know, the former Minister of Public Safety, who wasn't his fault that Paul Bernardo got transferred to medium security in the dead of night and the victims weren't notified. It's not his fault. It's never their fault. They didn't get the email. They didn't read the documents. Madam Speaker, they drop like flies, and I feel so bad for the MPs over there that actually care about their constituents. Because I know there are some. I see their body language in here when that Prime Minister stands up and they are sick, just like the rest of us, because he gaslights Canadians. He gaslights Canadians. Do you know, that's the hope I want to tell people at home. You need to have hope, because I'm telling you, it's here. The change is coming. 2-3 years ago, even when I first got elected, people were still afraid. They were afraid to speak the truth because, you know, you'd get canceled. You were a racist or a misogynist, or, you know, you didn't have a vaccine status, so you were a leper. You were divided, and you were shamed, and you were put down. And they'd cancel you. No more. Because people started to say, I'm not any of those things. I'm a good person who wants to just let people live their life without hurting others. And that's all people want in this country. And now they are standing up and they are fighting back against this insane government, this wacko government that has legalized drugs, that's become drug dealers. And all you have to do is go outside. 2 blocks from here. 2 blocks. Walk down the street. People who used to come to Ottawa would know Byward Market was like the most amazing place. Tell me a tiny town in this country that feels safe anymore. There's not too many. You know, when you have headlines of stabbings and shootings on a regular in a community like Peterborough, where the man who murdered an Indigenous woman is, you know, he might get 4 years. And people are so stressed. You know, I want to give you some stats, because I think the stats tell the human consequences of bad policy and bad leadership. And it's really important to know these numbers, because on the other end of these numbers are real people, real humans, and real families. Children have the highest rate of food insecurity among all age groups in Canada, 24% in 2022. That's 1.8 million children. 1/3 of kids in Canada do not enjoy a safe and healthy childhood. In what country like Canada do we not take care of our kids where they feel safe? 2/3 of Canadians report experiencing abuse before the age of 15. Nearly 1 in 5 kids lives in poverty. Suicide is a leading cause of death for children aged 10 to 14 in Canada. Over the past decade, Canada has fallen sharply from the 10th to 30th place amongst OECD countries for the well-being of children. 20% of children and youth in Canada, approximately 1.2 million young people, are affected by a mental health disorder. And if they have the courage to ask for help, Madam Speaker, I can assure you there's none on the other side of that. Because also in this country, under that Prime Minister, healthcare has been decimated. Because there are doctors ready to practice in this country, but they can't. We are spending more on servicing the debt in this country than we are on transfers to healthcare. The economy is the foundation of this whole problem. And that is why we are in this discussion right now. Because you have a government that forgot, or maybe they've known the whole time, the government doesn't have any money. It has taxpayer money. It has your money at home, not you, Madam Speaker. It has your money. And so when they take it, and they take it, and they take it, and they don't have any accountability, and they waste it, and they give it to their friends and their family, or they try to buy votes with a $250 check, but only some people get it. No, you can't give it to the people with disabilities or the people who actually really need it. And this is a quote from the Prime Minister. One of the fundamental challenges around affordability is they would love to say, well, you know what, we just need more money. Can you send us an extra $1,000 a month? As soon as you do that, inflation goes up by exactly that amount. Those are the Prime Minister's words. And yet, we have an inflationary crisis. We have an affordability crisis. I wonder why. Oh, could it be that he believes that budgets balance themselves, that he can buy your votes, that he can just spend, spend, spend and print more money like he's playing a game of Monopoly? Oh, you know what he'll do? He'll just increase the carbon tax to try to make up for that revenue and that money he's spending. And hopefully it'll be fine. Oh, wait, what does carbon tax do? Puts a tax on every single thing that Canadians use and drives up the cost of living even more. Madam Speaker, I don't know how much time I have left. 2 minutes. Thank you very much. I want to come back to the Finance Minister saying that Canadians just aren't in the right vibe. They're just not in the right vibe when they go to the food bank. They're just not in the right vibe when 1 in 5 are living in poverty, 1 in 5 kids are living in poverty. It's just not a good vibe. There's nothing serious about this government. And I actually implore you to not give up hope. I went to watch Gladiator with my parents and my kids on Friday night. And it felt so relevant as they rioted out on the streets and they had these emperors who were destructive and narcissistic and didn't care about the people. And there was a man fighting for the people. And there were people fighting with that man fighting for the people. Do not give up hope. We are holding this line. Pressure builds diamonds, and I promise you, I know it feels like Groundhog Day. I'm living it too. But there is a Canadian Gladiator here for you to bring it home, to make life affordable, to restore the hope of the Canadian dream. I promise you, it is coming. And we will get an election, and we will hold this Liberal NDP to account, and we will restore the hope of Canada. Thank you.